Okay, and we're good. Hey, oh my goodness, I can't believe did Travis disappear just as soon as
I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. So what
um
I so what I do, I'm down in my down in my dark basement, and for the stream, I like to have all my monitors on like a white image, so I get like the best image
right.
possible.
Nice.
Okay, that's what I'm doing right now,
Oh geez.
and we're live, right? So
Yeah, we are live, and sadly, my OBS keeps bugging out. We can see the chat. It's just not showing up on our screen. It's not showing up on the stream right now. But if you're watching us on YouTube, you see it in the other window. So there you go. Hey everybody, happy Friday. How are you doing today?
Hey, everybody. Doing great. How are you, Mitch?
I'm
I'm
doing
feeling
great.
great. I'm having a great week. Being real productive this week. I'm glad my block of travel is mostly over. Travel is fun, but as I get older and more set in my routines, I find it very discombobulating. And I've just been drilling down, making games. I'm pumping out articles, and I had a really fun time researching for this show we're doing today.
Before we get into this show, I want to talk about your recent visit to Venice,
Oh yeah.
uh, and the show that you had a piece shown in. I've been reading about it and stuff, and I just want to kind of hear your first person experience a little bit.
Yeah, okay, we can do a little bit of catch up on that, and I can even
Yeah.
weave a seamless plug into this, which is that if you want the full story, it's not even the full story, to be honest, it's a massive story. But if you want a take on it, just published this morning on outland.art. That's our
Ooh,
good friends at Outland have published the essay that I wrote that is sort of my review, my diary of the week, and it is structured as a fashion diary. So it is a 2,000 word essay about what I was wearing every day of the Venice Biennale,
heck,
and how
my
that
two interests combined.
yeah, and how that reflects, some of the themes that pervaded the overall Biennale. I think it's a fun piece, and in it um, I talk about some of the stuff that's happening in the Giardini and the Arsenal of the biennial in general and what the vibes were there. I talk specifically about some of the crypto art exhibitions that were going on there, set up by Bright Moments and the Sam Spratt exhibition.
Mm,
And the thing that I talk about the most is the exhibition that is currently on in Venice at the Fondazione Prada, which is an exhibition by the Swiss conceptual artist Christophe Buchel, in which I do sneakily, subtly have an artwork in that exhibition, and very relevant to our conversation. This is and I should have blasted you guys about this right away. So the way that it's presented is a little bit of background on this exhibition by Christophe Buchel. Okay, this is at the Fondazione Prada in Venice. So, which is it's a Baroque palazzo. It is 3 stories. It is opulent. It is right on the Grand Canal. And this is an exhibition that is about it's about debt, and it is about global financial systems, and it is about literally stacking on each of the 3 floors different models of how debt has been created across 5 different centuries. And the first floor shows Baroque era Catholic Monte di Pieta, which is a Catholic pawn shop slash lending house. The third story depicts a 20th century pawn shop full of junk with all these masterpieces of modern art hidden amongst it. Like, you will go through and you will not even notice that there are Andy Warhol sculptures just next to boxes of old PC games and board games. There's just piles of crap. There's like Royal Dalton China dolls just on a shelf like crap, and like an unlabeled Titian sculpture. It's nuts, right? It's insane. Um, and
I
then the
love I
second,
love that like presentation concept. That just piling stuff up and you like don't know what is a masterpiece and what isn't. It's so cool.
It's incredibly powerful, not just because it's fun as a sort of treasure hunt, but
Yeah.
because it's really poignant to the theme, right? Of just absolutely leveling all these artifacts as junk, which may or may not be worth some money. So it's a really effective presentation, experientially and thematically. And so then on the second floor is all about crypto, and it's all about crypto as a system to create value out of nothing, and then pamp the value through influencing on social media, and then create debt by creating a casino where people can put the value back in, right? And and so I have a piece. It's hidden there, sort of like in the same way that like the Marcel Duchamp is hidden and the Yves Klein is hidden and the Andy Warhol is hidden, and it's right in between. If you go to the Fondazione Prada in Venice right now, look for a PS4 running Fortnite and a PS3 running Spec Ops: The Line. And right in between there, there's a crappy old laptop with a hardware wallet connected to it. And that's my artwork. And I could not be more proud to be, I'm just in front of all this rotting takeout food and in between two video game consoles.
So cool. What could be more appropriate?
I know, it was great. So there we go, just constantly being amongst the video game crowd, even at the Venice Biennial.
Super, super cool. Yeah, no, I had major FOMO. I'm like, can I go to Venice? Am I, because it's up for a month, right?
No, it should be up till like the autumn.
Oh, really?
October,
Oh,
Yeah,
shit. Okay,
late
biennial
man.
stays up
October.
for a few months.
Oh, nice. Okay, so maybe I can actually go see it. I really
Go at the
want to.
end. That's the best time. Like all the pavilions are falling apart, and it's just like the last week's kind of a nice time to see the show.
Yeah,
Oh,
and you know
nice.
what's
Nice.
good, and you know one of the things one of the things that I wrote about in that essay that was published today is like that first week. This is my first time going to Venice in any capacity, much less for the biennial. You know, the preview week it's a lot of peacocking, it's a lot of that. And so you know, by going at the end, that's sort of over, and you can actually see the stuff that's good.
Mm, awesome. Awesome. Well, congrats on having the piece shown there in such an exciting context. I think that's so, so cool.
Thank you. It was really exciting. I had no idea what to expect from the exhibition before it started. I'd sort of like started the discussions with the curators like a year ago and like filled out all the paperwork and stuff. But like I didn't tweet about it or post about it because the exhibition was sort of shrouded in secrecy. So I had no idea what I was walking into right until the moment that I got there. And I mean, I could not be more proud. It's truly an astonishing exhibition there, and video game related, so we're still on topic. There are video games on display there, so I'm always, you know, just always representing the community is what I do. um
Super sick.
but I'll tell you one thing that's not in the article. I'll share one story with you related to your other major interest, Matt. And I know that I mentioned this in another Discord, but I'll say it here on stream. The other most exciting part of my trip last week, besides you know the art exhibition, was I was staying in a hotel on Lido, and I brought my whole family, which is a kind of a crazy thing to do when you're on like an art business trip. But like, so I brought two daughters, my sister, my wife, my mother, my mother-in-law, and my stepmother. All right.
What?
Yeah. Okay. So it was a big
Holy shit.
family jam, which was really nice. It was a really nice thing to do. We get to the hotel, and you know, I was just walking around checking out the hotel as you do. You spread out, try to see, you know, a good hotel. It's like an apparatus. You got to get comfy in it, figure out how you're going to use it. Going through the hotel bar, and I turned my sister with eyes as big as saucers, and I go, Dana, that's Rick Owens' wife. All right. And the first thing my sister says to me, Mitch, how do you know what Rick Owens' wife looks like? And I say, how do you not know? Like, that is Michelle Lamy. And for like the duration of our trip, Rick Owens' entire entourage was staying in the hotel. And like my experience was just like my mother in law and like my stepmom, and like just surrounded by the Rick Owens entourage, like fully decked out in 11-inch heels and like weird hanging,
Amazing.
flowing black clothes. It was really awesome.
That's so cool. Michelle Lamy is so cool. She's such a wild character herself and like it's totally unsurprising that she's sort of Rick's muse. She's like she herself is an amazing figure.
Yeah, and a nice example of like the kingmaker who actually I feel like has somehow even more like cred and mystique than like Rick himself. Like it was the most exciting celeb sighting I've ever had.
That's so cool.
Did you say anything to her?
No, I didn't. She was there. It was her birthday, and they were all there, like doing birthday stuff. And I didn't want to like gawk or anything. I didn't
Come
like.
on, you didn't say happy birthday? That's rude.
I know it kind of was, but
Could you
but there were
not?
always she's always surrounded by people. How you doing, Billy?
Fascinating.
You could have been one of those people. I'm good. Sorry I'm late. I was having some technical difficulties here. I don't know if you saw me joining and leaving. But I'm good. I just got back to Berlin, and I'm ready for this episode. This is the first episode. I'm a free man, y'all. I don't have such a conflicting schedule anymore. I mean, free man. I'm kind of the opposite now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You're just bound to a very different master now.
exactly. I'm master of myself.
But I'm excited. I'm
Um,
excited about it. I'm happy for you, and happy and selfishly happy to have you here.
yeah, I'm excited to be here. Excited for the games. What's our agenda like again? Do we confirm that
Our agenda?
for the day, the schedule? Like, what's
Oh,
the
well, let's jump right into it, shall we? Is that
Yeah.
cool? Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for humoring me with my gossipy celeb talk. Um, but I can jump into this by saying, first of all, actually, thanks to everybody. People keep sending us suggestions on our Discord, and kind of emailing me suggestions, and they're fantastic. My favorite thing about doing this every week is that I play stuff and read stuff and watch videos that I normally wouldn't watch. And so, big thanks to Regina Harsani, great friend of the show, for making me aware of this exhibition that is up right now at Public Works Administration Gallery in New York City. You guys ever been there?
how about it?
I don't think I have actually.
Okay, it's funny, Matt. I thought that I've actually hung out with you there. So PWA Gallery in
I'm
New York
just looking
City,
it
because
up.
I
Yeah.
saw a Sarah Friend exhibition there one time. And it's a really cool space. Tiny little space just off of a subway station, like somewhere around Midtown. Um, and right now, there's an exhibition of this video game art piece by Angela Washko, who is an artist and a professor at Carnegie Mellon University. And I actually hadn't played her games before. So we got in touch, we checked it out, and yeah, we thought we'd bring it onto the show because it's really exciting. And this is the last weekend that you can go and see this exhibition at Public Works Administration. I think it closes after the weekend. So if you're watching this live, go check it out because the version of the artwork that is on display there is a little bit different than the one that we have right here, which Angela generously gave us to run on the show.
Nice.
Yeah, so I thought we
Um,
would get it up, and this is a visual novel, and visual novels are a genre of art game. It's a pretty common genre for art games, and we haven't played any of those. We haven't discussed any of them. So I thought maybe we could kind of use this as a segue to get into that. But maybe I'll start by just running this game for a little bit. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
good.
Sounds great.
All right, let's do it. So I've previewed this beforehand, and we have here. So this is Mother Player by Angela Washko, currently on display at PWA Gallery. So let's check it out.
Now I can just read. I'm just looking it up online, and while it's loading, I can just read a little text from
Yeah.
the website. Mother Player is an experimental narrative video game featuring pregnancy and early parenthood stories from artists during the global pandemic. Set within a backdrop of the tense 2020 United States election and a terrifying new international health crisis, players explore the maternal healthcare industry and parenting culture as a burnt out pansexual artist who has decided to have a child despite an increasingly discouraging geopolitical climate that deprioritizes and devalues care.
Boom. So we're
Wait, I was
pretty.
gonna ask. I just wanted to see what happened if you say I don't want to play this game because it's always like the thing with websites, like are you 18 or older or whatever, and if you say no, they have to take you somewhere.
I
And it's
know.
always like this question where they take you. But we could do it another time.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
should. Okay,
curious.
okay. At the end of it, let's save that as a mystery to the end of the game because I actually haven't clicked that even on my own. They always used to take you to where did they take you? I remember a lot of times they would take you to Disney, or sometimes they would just take you to like Alta Vista. It's been so
Yeah, I'll have
long
to take
since
you
I've
to
seen one of those warnings that last time I did, Alta Vista was still a website.
classic. Great website. Missed that website.
Um,
Okay,
so here we are, sort of beginning of
not
the
being this
screen, and
fast
we
enough.
see the kind of visual novel stuff. Thanks for that background, Matt. So we get with like this is sort of like very classic, I think, like visual novel art game material where we have a very hyper specific like scenario that we're going to embody here, right? And we're kind of using the game vehicle to carry these sort of narratives, these visual artworks. Um, just using it as a very like efficient delivery mechanism for visual and narrative material. So we have, our first choices that we can make. All right, we're checking our phone. It's March 11th, 2020. A day that I will never forget. You want to know why? It's my
Why?
wife's birthday. Was the day it
Whoa.
was the worst birthday my wife ever had. Um Global pandemic.
So yeah, so she's found out that her performance art class is going remote, and
Yeah.
you just responded, "Shit."
Shit. All right. You quickly shake your head to stop your thoughts from spiraling and to stop you from monopolizing access to the bathroom. But what's going on in the bathroom? You put down your phone, clean up, and pull up your pants. Here we go. After you flush the toilet and wash your hands, you walk over to the pregnancy test sitting on the bathroom sink. You watch as it continues to process, stuck in an endless loop of uncertainty. When the results come in, you can barely believe your eyes. This is happening. You and your partner, right? Now you have this thing where you sort of manage your thoughts about having a baby. I will choose me and my partner have just started trying to have a child. Um, I played through the beginning of this game a few times, and I think that all of the options lead us here, which, eventually we can talk about how some of these how some of these decision trees branch out, I think, in different types of visual novels, right? But so far, all of the options that we're going to see, and I think this is a really common strategy in visual novels that are about like a really hyper specific character or really hyper specific scenario. We're not going to be branching the plot too much, right? And we're presenting
Mm.
these options as an opportunity, I think, for the player's reflection of it's almost like a check-in, like, hey, are you still there? If this is happening to you, how do you feel about it? And we're asking those questions not so much to influence the plot of what's going to happen in this gameplay experience, but literally as an emotional check-in, sort of making sure that the player is still there thinking and trying to relate to the stuff that's going on in the screen. All right. So are we pumped about this? Maybe. We have some questions about being pregnant. What about my body? You look forward to co-raising this kiddo, but you feel uncomfortable with how significant the impacts will be on your own body. Who will you be after this? What will be yours and what will belong to this baby? And breastfeeding is. Anyone want to jump in
Gross,
here?
gross, gross.
Gross,
It's gross.
gross. I think it's. I think it's on. Ugh. The thought of breastfeeding is gross to you. You know it's supposed to be this magical elixir and stuff, but you're not even totally convinced of its effectiveness. You've read that if you fail to feed your baby in the right hourly increments, that you'll be in a lot of pain and your breasts will leak all over your clothes. That is true from my secondhand experience. Um, let's let's do I think the macho guy thing and suppress these thoughts
Yeah,
for now. I think that's probably
here,
the best
here.
way for us to bring our own authentic characters into this experience. Your thoughts keep racing and you haven't even left the bathroom yet to tell your partner. Actually, I think role playing this game as like as macho bro is probably the most authentic way for us to interact with this game.
Here,
Your
here.
brain screams, "You're an artist." How are you going to keep being an artist? You contemplate how you will deliver the news to your partner. And our choices will be bam, baby time, E, soft embrace with hugs, tears, talks, or we can mod Tetris right now. And I don't think I have to survey the room to figure out which is your response here. I think we're jumping right. I think we're investing all of our energy into modding Tetris. But realistically, it would take hours or even days. And you already made your partner a modded Tetris game a couple of months into your relationship about how cute they are and how much they mean to you. Are you a one trick pony? Yes. I'm also going to answer on
Yes.
your behalf. Think I'm going to speak for all of you guys and know you well enough. How are you going to break the oh my okay, so we've eliminated that option from the sort of hub and spoke dialogue tree. Not I gotta say not happy with how I'm being forced to confront my feelings here. It's not respecting my
I
own play
don't want to
style of
confront my
life.
feelings.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
not
exactly.
you know. All right, time skips forward. A
No.
month after you and your partner found out that you were pregnant, the pandemic rages on. You are technically 8 weeks pregnant, but it still doesn't feel real yet. I think we'll go through a little bit more of this, and then I think we can kind of have a broader discussion. Nobody told you that you don't start showing right away. Everything is weird. You haven't gone outside in so long. Right. So I think I kind of want to leave this particular game at kind of a demo stage because the exhibition is still open and I do hope that people will
Sure.
go and see it. But I kind of wanted to use this as an opportunity to open up, general conversation about visual novels because this seems like a really common form that where a lot of artists are kind of bringing their stories. And I was trying to think when when did this medium, this kind of genre of game start to take off for you?
The first thing that comes to my mind actually is the Olia Lialana website. My boyfriend came back from the war from 1996.
Really? I don't even know
Um,
about that.
yeah, seminal piece, man. Travis, are you familiar with My Boyfriend Came Back from the War, the Olia Lialana website?
Yeah, great game, great book. There's like a really nice book that they made for it too.
I mean, but yeah, it's really like kind of interactive novel in a way. It pushes the narrative forward, and that was probably the first time I encountered that format. I mean, it's a little bit like choose your own adventure in a way, but there's various degrees of like how on the rails you are, I guess.
Yeah. Oh wow. Right. Oh, thank you. thank you, Rhizome Net Art Anthology, for giving us instantaneous access to that. Man, someday we should do an episode where we just play through the Rhizome Net Art Anthology. That would be really fun, actually.
Angela
Yeah.
Washko's The Game is on the Net Art
Oh
Anthology too.
yeah, actually, yeah,
So a
but
nice kind of.
great point, Travis. And actually, yeah, before we leave, but before we move away from that, yeah, we should point out some of Angela Washko's other work. Travis, you just mentioned it because I played this one as well in researching this. Yeah, Rhizome also Rhizome also contains this her game, which is I think really fun. It's called The Game, and it's another sort of text-based adventure visual novel game that is based on interacting with other NPCs who are playing the game, like the pickup artist handbook game. And this was a fun one to play through, and anyone can download this. I would encourage you to do so. That was pretty cool. But yeah, let's go back
And
to.
both.
The reference to the just to another point about that archive quickly. I attended the talk between Rhizome digital archivist director Dragan Espenscheid and Corey Archangel last week at the Michel Majerus estate,
Mhm.
or the opening of the Let's Play Majerus. And without going too much into like sort of the content itself or opinions about the works or anything like that, just the format itself really struck me as a interesting way of approaching an archive.
Mhm.
Archives are often just sort of like so overwhelming. There's so much content, and it's often like a very difficult wayfinding sort of process to get through it, especially in an instance like this where it was the archive of the artist's laptop that they had restored.
Mhm.
And so the way that they sort of address it is that like, or he does a playthrough. He's like a YouTuber, and you're like watching him play the archive. And so the idea that you sort of like can and steer somebody through a large body of work that way was really kind of striking. It also, of course, becomes through the lens of that person, and like, then it becomes a question like, oh, is this an interesting combination, or is this the right combination? And I was asking him at the end, like, will this eventually become more public so that somebody else could do their own, playthrough, or do it as a speed run, or you know what I mean? Like it would be a different experience when somebody else runs through it. But the idea of approaching Rhizome's art base that way does sound really appealing because it often feels overwhelming. It's just such a large amount, and unless you have a very specific work that you're looking for, it's sort of tough to try to chew on it. So I like that idea.
Yeah,
I love
let's
that
do it.
idea of the library of like artists or designers or programmers, like where you just have like a carbon copy of their like work OS, like wherever they are, and you could explore. That sounds great.
Yeah, let's do. Maybe Michael Connor will come on, and we can like deliberate, like really, like try to like speed run, or yeah, we could try to do the Rhizome archive in a bunch of different ways. Like we'll try to do a speed run, or we'll try to do like 100% speed run, and then yeah, Michael can come on and tell us how we're like doing it wrong or something like that, or be like the esports commentator.
Your competitive Rhizome speed run.
That would be great.
We have to look at each work between 15 and 30 seconds, which is like the average time someone looks at a painting.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get eye
So you got
trackers or
this,
something.
yeah, like with the Olia Leolino one that we're looking at right now, and also with Angela Washko's one that's on there. It's like 20 years later,
Mhm.
and all of the visual novels, most of the time, I feel like it's awesome. It's a format that also is about the artwork in it too, or the way the artwork is presented. Like here we get this like kind of black and white thresholded image.
Mhm.
In the game, it was all cyanotypes
Mhm.
that Angela Washko composited. And in the one you just showed us, it looked like it was like hand drawn
Mhm.
animation on paper and maybe like watercolor. So it's like it's a format that also feels like about show like um highlighting a kind of image or like kind of building a way of like a specific image style.
Yeah, I think that's a really great place to start. And even though it's a point that can seem obvious, like it's worth it's worth thinking about, because the mechanics of how this work end up really mattering, which is that these visual novels highlight first and foremost how games are, I think, just an effective delivery mechanism for visual art, right? Especially whenever we see a lot of exhibitions, right? I mean, a lot of visual art is not even implicitly, like explicitly trying to be narrative, right? Or is trying to be autobiographical. I think that's a really common trope in, a lot of visual art exhibitions that you would see. And yeah, often this sort of really minimal level of interactivity, and eventually we'll talk about how sometimes these levels of interactivity are not so minimal, but I would say even a minimal level of interactivity, I think, can add a little bit of tension or interest into the presentation of the visual artwork. Um, but what I would add to that is, like, looking at this piece is a really great example of how much the artist is putting that visual artwork content into, I don't want to say dialogue, that's such a cliche thing to say, but I'll resort to that cliche for now, like into dialogue with the delivery mechanism, right? Like here, the fact that this is a frame web page is such a huge part of the interactivity, versus, a visual novel like Mother Player, which we just saw, where you kind of want the Unity framework, the Unity engine, to disappear, right? um
Yeah, I love the use of frames here. It's so cool. And the way it's like kind of building this composition, and the way that like you click down the tree a little bit and then the frame blacks out. It's like that, it's over, and then a new frame opens up. It's such a cool device.
and even just the way this, like using the technical limitations of frames, right, results in an increasingly fragmented experience. I don't know
Mm.
how many of you guys were like around making web pages with frames, in the 90s, but the way I remember it, it was like once you put something in a frame, it was really hard for whatever HTML was being served up in the frame to understand its context and sort of like eliminate itself and reintegrate with the overall like larger frame. So I think this can only go one way, which is more and more fragmented. I might have that wrong though.
Mm.
This is a really beautiful piece.
There was
And there's
this net. Go ahead, Travis. My
no,
topics
no,
made me
go
actually
for
not
it.
reply.
Go for it.
It's a reference to the Netflix attempt to make interactive stories. Like I'm
Mm.
thinking again about the choose your own adventure, and a lot of this is sort of like, or even like a lot of games. I feel like lean harder into this than others, where it's like it's a movie where you have to like click a button before the next scene starts or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I kind of experienced Grand Theft Auto that way with friends playing it, where it was like watching Sopranos. It wasn't that important who did the task or whatever, but you were really like involved in the storyline. I mean, that's on the more interactive side of the spectrum, and on the less interactive side of the spectrum is like the Netflix interactive TV shows attempt, which I think even was about choose your own adventure books or something like that. So there is some activity, interactivity, and you can like lose by ending the show relatively early. But just trying to position these in that sort of like tension between on the rails and off the rails, but otherwise like having a pretty pre-prescribed idea of what the user is going to see, and limiting that sort of uh, combinatronics or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the Angela Washko game, we saw that pretty early on, right? Where you're like prompted to react, and then it even says in the next dialogue, like, whatever, something like, whatever you, whatever
Right.
you chose. We're continuing down the linear path, which I kind of hate,
Yeah.
right? As like a capital G gamer, elite gamer, I'm like, no, I need massive branching depth of choice. And me, I want to express my reality through a deep possibility space. So I think it's an interesting, like, confounding choice. and then like putting on my developer hat on, I'm like, ah, yes, smart use of budget and resources. Like,
Yeah.
don't
Well,
make a bunch of other screens for these things that you don't want people to do.
okay, so this is really so I think you've hit on a key point about the challenges of this format. And I think it's so important that people understand this because for a
Yeah,
lot of people who are trying to get into making video games, this will be the first type of video game that they make, right? The tooling has become really accessible with Twine and Ink or Inkle or whatever it is. And like and we've seen, like, you're talking right now about the ways that some of these are more
oh,
successful than
did we lose Mitch
others.
for a sec?
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. Am
there
I
you go.
gone?
Sorry.
You're back.
Okay,
You were
cool.
like, was it me or just, yeah, you like stopped for a sec.
All right,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
sorry.
glitched.
Might have had a
Okay.
hiccup from loading up some new software. Anyway, I was just talking about like some of the
Oh
things
yeah,
that make these
yeah,
visual
okay.
novels more or less successful, because I think like some of these are really good, and some of them are really not good. That thing that you talked about in terms of branching dialogue, right? Netflix games. I found there are two ways that people handle them. One is to just sort of brute force program or write as much content as possible so that the decision trees can branch out as like as much as they humanly can. And the best example that we see of this right now, in my opinion, is actually integrated into a game that uses a lot more mechanics and systems, but Baldur's Gate 3, right? I don't know if you've played Baldur's Gate 3, but if you've read the reviews for that game, everybody's in awe of, oh, all your decisions matter. There's so many different things that can happen. But that's not a procedural thing. There really are so many different plot twists that you can take, that you have control over by using this, essentially visual novel mechanic that is a part of a bigger action RPG game. And you can do whatever, and you can help the aliens, or you can fight the aliens, and you can betray your ally, or you can, have sex with your ally, whatever. But it's just brute force. They just had a staff of dozens of writers to create as much content as possible. And you need to reach that critical mass where the outcomes feel natural because you've written so much content that the user no longer feels like, oh, I'm gonna see what each of these four different branches do. You have to quickly overwhelm them so that it doesn't become that thing you do in the choose your own adventure book where you're like, all right, I'm just gonna see what are the six different endings I could get, right? Does that make sense? And then the other strategy I
Yeah,
see,
definitely.
yeah. But the other
No, go ahead.
strategy I see with regard to the like visual novel thing is to accept that it's on a rail, make sure that there's only one rail, and instead let the user fill in the color of the world. And the example of this that I've seen that's really good is Kentucky Route Zero. And in Kentucky Route Zero, like, the plot is really tightly scripted, it's beautifully written, it's only going to go one way, and the decisions that you make, it very deliberately doesn't go to a hub and spoke dialogue tree. Instead, what it does is you're given choices about your character's background. You can say, oh, I work at an antique shop, or I'm divorced, or whatever, and then the game just moves along, and the consequences really are just with you. Like, that's your world now that you're internalizing, that you're bringing to bear on the game. And I think that was a really smart way to do it.
Yeah,
Sorry, kind of on a
absolutely.
rant
I
there.
think that the no. I think it's a good. I mean, this is. I think the with visual novels that ease of entry, or even adventure games, right? Like I would put Kentucky Route Zero in the kind of adventure game
Mhm.
category, right? Like the on some level, well, there's a few things, right? It's a very controlled format for the creator. Because you're limiting dynamism and interactivity, you can present these kind of set pieces in this very controlled way, right? Like you can say, here's the scene, this kind of like limited verbs, limited dynamism, like very often the camera can't move, like it's all kind of this like almost like a diorama, right? And then you can kind of walk people through this like controlled sequence of set pieces.
Mhm.
Then on the other other hand, you have the tension and that's also good from what you mentioned of like Twine, right? Twine games, right? That it's that makes it especially if you do text only, that makes it a low barrier to entry, right? And therefore it's like it is a way that a lot of people, especially people coming from more like narrative type backgrounds, less like developer type backgrounds, will get into making games.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like but that is the kind of trade-off, right? That it's a content heavy, it's very low in kind of procedurality, right? And therefore it's a content heavy format. So it's kind of both like the advantage and the trap for the creator, the artist, right? That it's like, it's kind of easy to create some content. And if you want to create a linear narrative, it's quite easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the length. But as soon as you want to start to create a deeper branching volume of experience, suddenly now you have to literally hand make all of that volume of content. And I feel like that's a little bit of a weakness of the structure, is that it doesn't have that kind of combinatoric thing that you would get in something like a card game, right? Like Balatro or something, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like you get easy combinatorics and suddenly this kind of exploding possibility space. Whereas like with this, you have to kind of grind out a lot of content if you want it to feel deep and rich.
Mm-hmm.
As a player, there's also something frustrating about like playing one route through and knowing that there's like a handful of options. There's only three. They were limited because of that sort of content restriction. I'm more frustrated by not seeing the other three alternatives than I am in a game like Balatro, where there's just an infinite number of alternatives. Like, of course, you're never going to be able to see every version of that. Whereas when you're so close to actually having like the full saturation of the game or something, like it bothers me more of like, now I'd have to go back and I have to click yes instead of no, and I have to see that version of it too. Because I mean, it's much more intentional content in that scenario too.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I
So
think
Might
that.
be
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like I get it. Faced with three choices, when you make one, you actually feel like you lost two. Like they're all losing options because you leave the two on the table. And yeah, the only way to get around that is to just present so many opportunities that it feels near infinite, like the combinatorics that Matt's talking about.
I got
Maybe
a
that's a nice
kind
game
of
to make. Like
definition
the
to think about. Like, so there's this kind of large genre of interactive fiction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And visual novels is like a subset
Mm-hmm.
of that, right? And and like the thing that Billy's talking about, where there's like these other kind of options that you could take with it, like those matter less than the kind of story that you got out of it, right? Like because it's story forward as opposed to gameplay forward. um like that the art and the story end up mattering way more than any kind of gameplay mechanics that are going to be put in it. Am I saying this right? Like, are there like maybe, I don't know if like a dark room or um paper clips,
Mm-hmm.
the paperclip game, kind of universal paperclips, kind of are kind of tying those two things together or not, but and does this
Pickup
make
game came
sense?
up recently as a example for something that like it is really like you are on a track with how fast on that track you go. But I guess every game is kind of like that. How fast can you beat the game? Choices you make determine the speed at which you go through the story. Um, the thing somebody else brought up with Paperclip game recently was what a good job they do drastically changing the type of actions you have to take at each level. Like the game, it's essentially like 5 or 10 different games, but like, they're all sort of like grabbed together to this thread that you're doing the same thing. Getting a little bit off topic now. I just was reminded this came up just a day or two ago.
Mm-hmm. And so, Travis, are you thinking about paper clips, universal paper clips, as an interactive? What did you say? Interactive? Because I was saying visual novel, but
Interactive
Interactive.
yeah,
fiction.
interactive fiction is a better term actually. That's actually a much better term. I forgot that term.
Well, interactive fiction is like the super category, right?
Yeah.
Interactive fiction is a whole genre in and of itself that is kind of like adjacent to games,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like a lot of people, there's a scene of people making what they would call interactive fiction and might say that they're not game makers,
Mhm.
right? And then visual novels, I would say, are like the foot on the side of like, yes, we're making games, and specifically, it's not text only, right?
Mhm.
Hence the visual novel
Right.
appellation, right? Uh,
Like I have a friend, Nicholas O'Brien, who makes a lot of games that I would say fall are in the visual novel category. And in all of those, it's the story I remember, not the kind of interaction. It's
Mhm.
like it's the choice I had to make and the importance of making that choice versus knowing what the outcomes of the other choices are. Like I don't know if that holds for y'all. It's like a genre that like also it feels very academic. Like it's like that I think about it in terms of like being taught in like game design 101 or or even like in language arts classes, but also being in institutions like shown in institutions that's um like from that kind of communicating a story or something perspective.
Just Googling that term, I'm reminded there is this really popular version of it in Japan, though. I've seen it on like the Switch game store when I sometimes like sort by the cheapest games possible. The cheapest games possible are always these like vaguely sexual,
Yeah.
like going through school kind of things, like shopping with your friends, but it's like the sort of like anime manga merge, where it's like it's just anime style drawings with a lot of text heavy and then like small choices. And like looking at the Wikipedia list again, there's like it's almost completely dominated by those. But you're right. I feel like I've actually encountered them in more the academic concept, Travis, like with art school or something like that. But actually, I think in commercial use, they're probably way more prevalent in this context.
yeah, I think you can't talk about visual novels without talking about you know, anime erotic games, right? It's definitely like a big part of it. Probably in terms of like just the audience size, right? It's like big titty anime girls making dialogue choices with you. Um,
Sexy dating simulators.
Dating simulator.
Yeah.
Yeah, dating
yeah,
simulator is
well,
the term
dating,
I just
yeah,
saw.
exactly. Dating simulators are a big part of this, and there are like, then you have the like art game overlap, right? Like Hatoful Boyfriend, right? Which is like
Yeah.
a kind of important visual
What was that one?
novel. Hatoful Boyfriend, which is a game where it's a dating simulator, but it's all pigeons. I actually haven't played it. I just
I
Wow.
I
have.
just
I
know
have
of it,
played it.
but like,
It's as weird as it
oh,
sounds. Like
nice.
because I can't remember if it's made apparent whether you yourself are a pigeon or not, but definitely everyone at your high school is only pigeons, right? And it's very like there's a lot of innuendo, like you're dating, and it's like you have to choose like which pigeon you're going to date. What I really enjoy is the absurdity of like trying to decide which pigeon I was most attracted to. And I guess it was the one with the colorful wing markings, like, really trying to role play this thing.
True to life.
Mm-hmm.
That genre
Yeah, the
kind of
screenshot's
went
really good.
going further and further too. I know there was one where you dated World War II tanks, like it was called, where you were dating different tanks and you had to figure out which one you.
Yeah, I think I've heard about that too. I think that like yeah,
That's
weird
awesome.
weird dating simulators became a thing, which is great and delightful. And yeah, illustrates the point as to how prevalent this particular type of, interaction model, mechanism, game genre, whatever you want to call it, has become.
I mean, I do think there's also a gender conversation here, right? Like this is definitely a girl game genre or, girls and gays kind of genre.
Mhm.
It's like there's a pretty clear delineation that way. And I think it's not really an accident that like, I mean, I don't know the gender of Dreamfeel, but it's like so far it's like we're dealing with like a mom game and I think the choice of the visual novel format is like not incidental in that regard.
Yeah, and I don't.
So just through hyperlink.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no,
I'm
please.
gonna tie it up after. You go for it.
You're what? Oh no, I was just gonna
I
say
just
like.
wanted to mention that Wikipedia is looking through it. That we have a no. We got to fix our lag. Um, just throwing out the term hypertext fiction apparently is the more correct term for like Oli Leolanas. My boyfriend came back from the war. It actually includes James Joyce and the longstanding tradition.
So, yeah, thank you. And I was just going to respond to what Matt was saying about, the genre of games, right? Like gendered genre of games, which I am not going to pretend to understand, why it is this way. But yeah, we definitely see evidence of it all the time. And yeah, it's no coincidence that we opened this episode with, Mother Player, which is a game about the experience of being pregnant, as I believe in the project description says a pansexual, arts professor. So all those things you were mentioning were there. Being academic, all right, being like very gendered. That these are, tend to be girl and queer genres. And this game that we're playing right now, and I'm going to take a couple minutes right now just to introduce what I've been playing in the background right now. It's called If Found by Dreamfeel. And it is, right, and it's a story about a transgender youth. All right, this is the main character. Their name is Cassio, short for Cassiopeia. And it's like, and it's a short story about them returning home to a small town in Ireland. And so really absolutely reinforces what you're saying about these being very gendered genres. And later on we can hypothesize about why that may be or not. But I want to take just a minute here to point out like some of the game mechanics and design decisions that we're seeing in this game, which is why I wanted to talk about it in the context of interactive fiction or visual novels, because this was a game that I think makes almost every decision correctly. Starting off with, one of the challenges I think that visual novels have is that they can be really monotonous. There's image, there's text, you click through, you click through, you click through, right? And you can see here already how many different delivery mechanisms for text you're getting. So right now we have the kind of classic RPG text dialogue bubble up top, click through, and I'm literally just clicking. All right, dialogue bottom at the dialogue bubble at the bottom, right? So we have that, and we're used to that method of presenting dialogue. It makes sense, but in the section before this, we had a diary where I was reading things as diary entries. And then in the opening section, there was like a sort of omniscient, like there was a sort of first person narrator, like sci-fi intro. So the way that it breaks up the different styles of storytelling, I think is really smart so that you can't kind of get into a rut. And the other thing, as soon as we get out of this clicky dialogue section, is well, actually, first, before we get out of the clicky dialogue section, it's worth even noting even just the programmers and artists that can use good camera moves and pans to keep their visuals like dynamic. The shaky pencil line, whatever, is the common thing to do. But even just using a little bit of cinematic filmmaking, I think always goes a long way in these genres. I get really sick of the classic JRPG static image, click, click, dialogue, dialogue, and we get a lot of variety here in terms of how they transition from one art asset to the next. I think that's really good. And then I'll get through this clicky dialogue and you'll see the primary mechanism with which you advance the text, which is so simple here, but in a visual novel or interactive fiction artwork, because there are so few mechanisms, like the few that you have should be really relevant and meaningful to the theme. And it's really worth noting. It's something that a lot of reviewers picked up on whenever this game first came out and was very critically acclaimed, is that besides those JRPG dialogue bubble sequences, most of how you interact with this game, and I first played this as a text or as a on iPad, and it's a great mobile game. Like this works really well as a mobile game, is by touching and erasing. So you never just click through. The game's never just click, 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 next dialogue, click, 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 next dialogue. You always, and it's really great on iPad, right? You take your hand or your finger and you rub across the screen to erase, to reveal the next dialogue, the next narration, the next art asset, and you get these camera moves. It's really smart. It really works. It works on a thematic level, and that this is as a sort of transgender coming of age story. There's this idea of erasing whatever was there before to reveal the next thing. And it also really works on a super basic empathetic level where like you're literally just touching and making contact with the screen over and over again. You're doing something that's a little bit more active than clicking. And I know it's a really small difference, but it's one that I think matters inside this genre. So that was just something that I wanted to point out as small
It
design
makes me think,
decisions that can make a big difference.
yeah, that's really beautiful. It also makes me think of like this joke of people scrolling on their phones is really just them petting their devices. They really, they just like this little guy.
Well, yeah, actually, a number of
That
games
you
have figured
yeah,
out
you
that
have
that's a
a like
good
an
game
intimate
mechanic.
interaction.
Yeah. That makes me think about have you ever played the game Reigns? That basically is like, that's also a sort of really basic interactive fiction mechanic game where like you tell a story just by swiping left or right on certain options and kind of figuring out that. Figuring out that Tinder was a good gameplay mechanism, that should be further gamified.
Yeah, I really like the idea of using the swipe right, swipe left as like a core mechanic in Reigns. I think that's a really, really smart decision that they made. And it's like one of the few games that you feel is really mobile native, right? It's really taking the mobile form factor and trying to do, you know, use those gestures and idioms in a in a game in a smart way. And I think it's not surprising that it did very well for that.
So a kind of general question that I had for you guys is, like, I was really curious how this was going to play out with us because I feel like we're all more like, you know, our tastes all lean more towards combinatorics, procedural stuff. We like system stuff, and it's what we talk about a lot here. How many of these types of games do you guys actually play? And like, do we even like games like this? Do we even consider them games?
It's
I
always
actually
on
do.
recommendation. It's like I never look for these games. It's always like I know someone who made it, or there's like an institution, like some kind of exhibition or something that's kind of having me engage in this. But it's yeah, and in all the times playing them, it's never the game part that I remember. It's the story I remember.
You'd hope would be what you remember for a
Yeah,
game like this.
Yeah.
right.
I played Firewatch, which I think fits in this category or close to this category. Like I mentioned before, even Grand Theft Auto for me kind of functions in this like I'm here for the narrative in a way. Like the gameplay is fun, but honestly, I'm not that good at games, so sometimes the like curve of difficulty throws it out of the like fun balance for me. So it's why I can always rely on my handy playing partner Everett, as I've mentioned before, is just very good at playing games. So I feel like actually watching somebody play games is often a method that I prefer. And then there's the games that are so easy to play for this exact point that it's really just about the narrative. And the one that comes to mind was Firewatch, which is by the game company we mentioned last week, Panic Software, who made the Playdate and the best file transfer protocol applet out there. And it was definitely like a COVID play, I think, where I was like a little bit more time at home with like the Switch and was like I think I could do like a walking simulator that has like narrative heavy vibes, and I really enjoyed it.
Hmm. I never got too far. I never got too far in Firewatch, and it's funny because, all right, so to answer my own question, I always think that I don't like the visual novel genre, and then I will also get them based on reviews, just like you were saying, Travis, or often I get them because like they're published by a publisher who I trust, right? Often Annapurna, right? Like this game is Annapurna. There's another one, Florence, I played, and I will generally just get anything Annapurna publishes, and then I always end up liking them a lot more, like a lot more than I was expecting. And they end up sticking with me a lot more, even though I come at them with some amount of caution. And even some games that are more interactive fiction that are a little bit more mechanics heavy have been some of the most impactful gaming experiences I've had in the past year. I'm thinking specifically of a more a sort of more interactive game with some light mechanics called I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, another like very heavy on the writing game, very ready righty games. And Citizen Sleeper was a big indie game that came out a couple years. It basically a story with some really light um, light like action adventure mechanics. I always end up liking them more than I was expecting. But things like Firewatch, like where two things about them. One is it's just a little bit too much friction for me to get my story. It's like, really? You're going to make me press forward to walk for 10 seconds to get the next tidbit of this narrative? Really? Um, and it's also like just a little bit not on rails enough for me. Like it's not on rails enough that I feel like a great writer can really exercise their craft, but it's still too much on rails that I don't feel like I matter very much in this story at all. I don't know, not my sweet spot. It's an awkward in between place for me, the walking simulators.
Well, I
That's a
think that
fair critique.
I think there's a interesting, we could talk about like levels of abstraction in that regard, right? Like the, because Firewatch is like a, I think, very nice looking, fully 3D rendered, an animated environment. It's kind of leans more towards the cinematic type thing. It's kind of like what you see is what you get in terms of visuals. Whereas something like Citizen Sleeper, which I really loved as well, um, is feels more like something between a comic book and a novel. And I thought they did a really nice balance of, it kind of opens up into this open world is too strong, but there is this kind of map um, part of the game where you're kind of choosing what to do next. And yeah, it is all relatively on rails. It's not a big possibility space, but there are these moments of openness and you have some little resources to spend. So there is that little system layer where it kind of just, for me, like opened out just enough that it had some like amount of nonlinearity and I didn't feel too railroaded along. And I felt like the combination there of good writing, in my opinion. Gareth Damian Martin, I think is the guy's name, or the person's name who did that. And then they also did In Other Waters, which is great, which is just a very like writing and sound heavy UI based like submarine navigation game that I think I mentioned on a previous episode. But that combination of some very nice kind of like French manga style character illustrations and then good writing was like just enough to give me this like little mental movie that was like immersive because of the lack of fully fleshed out, there was like enough for me to imagine this space station and this world and this stuff without being kind of faced with like a full 3D environment, animated characters, whatever. So I felt like that hit a nice kind of level there. And I think actually this Dreamfeel game kind of does that well too, right? It does feel like a world. I find these like character drawings charming. And the writing feels kind of, earnest and like it's doing what it's trying to do in a good way. And um but there is this amount of abstraction, right? We have these like characters against these kind of color field backgrounds, and it's like there's enough space there for you to start imagining, as opposed to like super detailed house
Mhm.
drawing background. Like we're in the kitchen, we're in the bathroom, and so I feel like that interplay of like the right amount of abstraction really serves these kind of things well. And I do think, just as a game maker, the care and attention in this visually to like all the transitions, all the little paint texture transitions, and like, yeah, it's like a little twee, but it's like it's very, very well executed. Like I see it and I respect it a lot. And I think it's like this is kind of the thing that I'm missing a lot of the time in these kind of things, where there is not a lot of attention given to the kind of structure of the presentation and the visual texture and so on, and the animation, where it just feels like click, 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 image, text box, which kind of, yeah, I'm not that into.
Yeah, I agree completely. And even like, what you were saying, I also agree, like, yeah, it's a little bit twee, but this is the thing. And it's why these kind of games are worth thinking about, because the twee is that I agree with you. This all looks very twee, and so many of these interactive fiction things like look very twee, and that is not. It's just not my aesthetic, right? It's just but and so, as I say, I always come at these things a little bit cautiously, like, yeah, this is a critically acclaimed, so give it a shot. And it always ends up working with me. Like, it always ends up working on me. The good ones, at least. Um, so much of what you were
Critically
talking
acclaimed
about.
for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Critically acclaimed for a reason. So much of what you were saying, Matto, also relates to comic books, which is the other big, I think, like kind of cross medium comparison that you can make here. Um, and not just as an audiovisual medium, like not just as like, oh, look, we're putting pictures and words together. Therefore, it's just like comic books. Like, sure, yes, that is true. But there's a couple other layers that I think are important. First of all, what you were described, but like what you were describing as appropriate layers of abstraction. Those are strategies that comic books have been using like for years. The other thing that a good visual novel does, that a good comic book does as well, is pacing. Right. A good visual novel or interactive fiction isn't just click, 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 click. That's all one pace. That's a monotonous pace, right? You'll see it happen here where, this game will often keep me on just only slightly different versions of the same visual and force me to rub through, right? Like there was a scene we just passed maybe 5 minutes ago, right? Where it's just pencil strokes indicating a rainstorm. And, I rub through, there's more rainstorm. I rub through, there's more rainstorm. I rub through, there's more rainstorm. That's classic. This is a classic comic book pacing mechanism that really good comic book pencilers will do, right? Of just repeating frames to like indicate how long a moment feels. It's really smart. You can learn, I think, a lot about making these games from comic books.
Yeah, I think it's a
Somebody
really
in
good
the
reference. Go ahead, Billy.
somebody in the chat talking about playing games in the 90s, that there were some more graphic adventure ones that were on the side of the novel, but they were all generally considered worse games. For instance, Myst, and one of the things in the Wikipedia article was a criticism or a critique from someone talking about just how much more difficult it is to write a visual novel that has multiple outcomes. I mean, I guess if we're talking about a single outcome, it's maybe not blame in this sort of same way. Um, I have similarly felt like, it's difficult to do well. Um, I guess it's why, we only take those recommendation ones or the critically acclaimed ones, because it's also such a like big ask to go through one. And if you're not like confident that it's going to be a payoff, then we're all sort of used to being burned by them, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, who's done it well
But
and who's
Myst, I
done
think,
it
is a
not
great
though?
counterexample because Myst is great.
Yeah, that's a funny. So shout out to Eric DeJulie, great artist in the chat. I feel like Mist was interesting. I really enjoyed Mist when it came out. There were moments of grinding frustration, getting stuck on the puzzles, but I kind of remember Mist being well, at least I'm pretty sure it was a commercial hit, right? Like I kind of remember it being perceived as a big success. Even though, yeah, as you say, it was like a kind of 3D rendered hypercard clicking puzzle, but I remember it doing pretty well and having a positive memory of it.
My mom played it. She loved Myst. She played Riven afterwards. I was like, I think I maybe finished Myst, but like I had to get help from my mom. It was like that era, and it was a great bond between, gamer types.
That's great. I have a confession. I never played Myst. I my computer
Don't
just didn't have the
don't tell
specs to
anybody
run
that.
it.
Now, yeah, I'm sure your computer does, Mitch.
I know.
It's
I guess
time.
I should.
That's
It's kind of a
crazy.
remedial gaming 101. It's kind of like a thing that I should catch up on. And so did Myst have like
Yeah,
a lot of writing and multiple endings and stuff?
Myst had some limited dialogue. There were these videos that would pop up, but they were pretty few and far between. But generally, yeah, as Eric says in the chat, like that it was celebrated for its graphics. It was one of the first games to really heavily use pre-rendered 3D
Mhm.
graphics and give you this sense of exploring a 3D world, even if it was like one frame at a time, and there would be these like isolated moments of animation or video. I think it must have been a CD-ROM game when I
Yeah.
think about it, uh, which is an interesting, just little moment in game history. Um, and yeah, and he's, you know, um, making a counterexample with stuff like the LucasArts games, Sam and Max, Day of the Tentacle, which was, what's his name? The Double Fine, right? The kind of classic adventure games and like in the lineage of like kind of Monkey Island and stuff. I feel like Myst because of the visuals, the Mist Island, and especially like I feel like I remember being on the Mist Island. It had this very strong sense of place, uh, and because of it being like an early 3D environment, it felt there was a sense of embodiment in it that's pretty interesting that they achieved with still images. Um, and then I think they went back and remade a real-time version of it. I actually met the Miss Dev at one point at like a gaming convention and had like a chat with him. It was like pretty interesting. It was nothing like big to report, but I just remember like kind of fanboying out a little bit. Um, yeah.
I'm curious about that remake where it's all interactive in the remake. They just rebuild the whole space.
I assume it's just real time. They must be doing click to navigate between fixed points, and it's just showing the animation of turning the camera. I now am kind of curious too how they did that. I feel like the spiritual successor to Mist was The Witness by John Blow, which I perhaps controversially kind of hated um, because I felt like it definitely had a lot of the DNA of Myst of these like, frustrating puzzles that you'd spend a lot of time stuck on in kind of beautiful environments. But I found it to be so dry and boring.
I was just too dumb. I was just too
It's just
dumb. I couldn't solve like the second puzzle.
Yeah. I feel like there was a feeling of that. It was like a little bit kind of like you idiot, and some of the puzzles were I mean, there was definitely a perspective of it. It was a kind of like a ways of seeing game. It was like if you look at this like this, these shapes look like each other, right? But it just had a very dry. I mean, I also just don't like John Blow as a person. I think he's annoying. So it had this kind. I just felt like I was hanging out with John Blow with his like acerbic personality and being told I was stupid all the time, and I was like, "Fuck you, I'm not doing this."
That's fair. That is fair. Totally fair
maybe I have to try this,
Mhm.
despite how annoying this person might be. I feel like the puzzle genre is my my family's legacy. That's like how I mentioned bonding with my mom. That was all the games we played super early were all puzzle games. Dr. Brain and stuff.
Yeah, it's super post Mist. So like if you and your mom liked Mist, you should definitely play The Witness together. I mean, I think it's visually pretty strong. It was also like very, very hyped. It was like, I feel like the Witness is kind of like a product, John Blow in general with Braid, and then it's like a very much like indie game art insecurity genre, right? It's like, no, 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 we're serious. We're making serious, big, ambitious works of art that are puzzle games, like, and they're beautiful and serious. And like, I'm just like, I don't have a lot of time for that.
Okay, so can we talk about tone and posturing within the different genres of video games for a second? Because right, so I forgot, like, I don't know, like the name John Blow wouldn't ring a bell to me because I'm not like as in the like kind of video game community as you are. But now, yeah, now I remember, yeah, Braid and stuff. There was there's another reason why, like, again, I rarely play this type of game that we have up right now. I You guys know this about me. I like earnest core is my least favorite genre out there, right? I've never played Braid. I know Braid was like critically acclaimed, but I just remember the trailers for that game being like pan flute, like, what if what if we could mend the wounds that we've created with those we love, like being so earnest core, and then
Totally.
like even the art style, like looking like a sort of like child's fairy tale book, and it like really made me cringe. But then like some when I engage with these things, I often end up liking them. But like what's ah some of the presets that people fall into when they're trying to present as art or as intelligent really drive me
Yeah.
crazy.
That was, I feel like, I mean, and it has to be contextual. I mean, Braid for a lot is one of the like seminal indie games of like the indie game movement, right? It was featured in Indie Game the movie. Like it was, Indie Game the movie was Super Meat Boy, Braid, and Fez, right? As a kind of triptych, and the going back and forth between these different people. And that movie, that documentary, which is great and worth watching if folks haven't seen it, but really kind of launched 1,000 ships of narrativizing narrativizing game creators as kind of like indie artists, and launching a kind of a cult of personality around these kind of three figures of Ed McMillan, John Blow, and Phil Fish. And John Blow was in that trio was kind of trying to position himself as like the mature and high-minded one. And yeah, it's like exactly all those tropes, this kind of like twinkling piano music, the painterly art style, this story about regret and, rewinding time to fix your emotional wounds. And it was all extremely kind of like earnest, serious core vibes that, yeah, when you look back now is a little bit like, holy cow, but at the time it was in a context of, this was Xbox Live Arcade, right? They all came out on Xbox Live Arcade. There was really not obviously the Flash game thing had happened, and there were important game artworks and stuff being made, but nothing was getting onto the kind of gamer world stage the way those things were. So it was kind of like historically important, obviously for the video game side, looking from the video game side, much less from like the art side. But yeah, but also annoying in many ways.
Okay, quick survey, and then I think I have a point that I'm trying to make with this. What are some other like real earnest core games? Just help jog my memory, because I think I have an idea about them. Most earnest core
I mean, I
games.
think one game which I think is a good example of this genre that I wanted to bring up when we were looking early on at Mother Player is Depression Quest by Zoe Quinn. This was the game that was the subject of the Gamergate kind of online civil war hate movement, and used the convention of the Twine game, right? Not even a visual novel, but just like an interactive text game, and but made a smart mechanical gesture with this thing of you get like 3 dialogue options, and one of them is like the healthy productive option, like get out of bed and go do the laundry, but it's grayed out because you're too depressed. You kind of know that it's there as a good choice, but you can't click it, right? And kind of as you get more depressed, more of these options like get grayed out, and it was a good, little kind of piece of procedural rhetoric. Like obviously there was this narrative layer, but then through the mechanics, you kind of get the feeling of like, I know I should do this, but I can't. So I thought it worked pretty well, and was like a good take on this like visual novel or interactive fiction type genre, but where the narrative and the mechanics were like well aligned, and it's like a tiny little game. You can play it in like 10 minutes and it's free online. Um, and then it was like this spark of this whole like online right wing Civil War thing.
What was the name of it one more time?
Depression Quest.
Yeah, I actually
Artist
haven't
is Zoe,
played
or
it.
the
That's
developer is Zoe
definitely
Quinn.
it's definitely on my
I mean, I want to
remedial
play it.
playing list.
The game that comes
Yeah,
to my
it's good.
mind for what do you call it?
Ernest
Earnest
Core.
core.
Yeah.
Uh, is maybe a short hike. Although I kind of liked it. Do you guys know this one? It
Mm-hmm.
has like a
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
really
great.
I've downloaded it
so
so many
sweet.
times in so many indie game bundles, and I haven't played it. Every time there's an indie game bundle that's like going to support some sort of good cause, a short hike's always in it. So I have it like 12 times. I haven't played it.
It's
Did
good.
you?
I wouldn't put it necessarily in the earnest core genre. It's more like it's like more like twee core, like proto cozy games movement.
Yeah,
Um
I mean, but there's like some emotional, it's like kids feeling insecure because the parent's getting a surgery and he's on this island or she's on the island. Like,
I guess that's true. I guess that's true.
there's some like
It's
an
and it's
emo
that part, Billy, that like is what Mitch is referring to as being earnest core, right? That you're sharing like actual feelings and emotions in a way that's like not holding back or like trying to position it with gravity. Like what is
Mm,
earnest core? I don't understand what you mean by it still.
You know,
I
it's
think that
like
is, but it's
pornography.
coming
You'll
as
know it when you
a
see it.
criticism. You know it when you see it.
You know
I
it when
think
you see
though
it.
the criticism that I'm getting from Mitch is, and feel similarly, is like the attempt at connecting earnestly, but the failure to do so, and it's sort of doubly
Okay.
offensive when you do a bad job of doing it. You're like, I don't relate to this. Like,
Okay,
I
I get it.
reject
Yeah,
this,
I
and
get
now
it.
I'm kind of grossed out. Like, even just looking at the braid drawing of that character makes me like physically shudder a little. Like, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to like relate to you. I don't want to be inside of your emotional landscape.
yeah. I feel like a game that's really critical for earnest core is Gone Home. The like one of the seminal walking and rummaging simulators, which I did play a little bit, but I bounced off of, and I think is about someone. It's either, I don't know if they're coming out of the closet or it's about somebody else coming out of the closet, but it was very much of the moment of like this kind of like sensitive queer narrative driven, made by a small team. It was like 4 people who were like all living in a house in Portland who like made it, and it was like there was very much like a certain moment where that was like, yes, indie games can like be about something. And it's like, um, and that was very, very earnest core, I think.
You know what's great about games? It takes all kinds because it
Yeah.
takes all kinds of people to play them.
No, it's totally fine. Like, look, obviously, like there are certain games, especially with so many sort of like, communities, the various like heterogeneous communities that now can exist inside gaming. It's totally awesome to have games that are like targeted to a specific community. I don't know for how many people that is the goal, and how many people are sort of like actually trying to create like a mainstream phenomenon, and sort of like and how many are trying to cater to one particular audience. But I guess where I'm going with this about the earnest core thing is that I'm trying to take this in a direction to talk about something that you um, explained really well via a video that you sent me earlier this week, Matt. The challenge of
Mm.
actually communicating something specific, a specific point of view through a video game, right? Through any sort of interactive media. Because here's my point about Ernest Cornus. And I was just saying, like, I always bounce off of all that Ernest Core stuff, but I really like these visual novels. And it's because, all right, if you have something really important to say and it's about something that's a really difficult, uncomfortable topic in the world, putting that inside a really fun delivery mechanism isn't often going to work the way you think it is. And games always sort of slant to fun, all right? And if your game isn't fun, then it's, for better or for worse, it's probably not perceived as a very good game. And if it is fun, like, it's hard to make a fun game about the example that led the video that you showcased that we'll throw in the Discord. Was about a sweatshop simulator, right? Here's an artist trying to show the horrors of the conditions inside of sweatshops and make a sweatshop video game. But it turns out the video game was just too fun. Like, running the sweatshop was really fun, right?
Well, and specifically, well, in really importantly, and so the talk is Soren Johnson. I think it's called, yeah, it's hard to run a sweatshop. We'll link it, but you can.
Awesome
It
talk.
was a GDC talk, and Soren Johnson is the lead developer on Civilization, so he's extremely kind of systems literate, good game designer, journey person game designer.
Also has a great podcast called Designer Notes where he interviews game designers, and it was like my first kind of introduction to game design was through his podcast.
Here. Yeah, no, I think a really, really relevant, important thinker. And the problem with the sweatshop game is that you play as the sweatshop owner. And I think the idea was to kind of create some feeling of like, oh, I'm complicit in like making these decisions, or like to kind of get you to feel what it's like to make decisions that are like negatively impacting the workers. But that, I think this was Tom Francis, the guy who made Gunpoint and Heat Signature, wrote about it. He was like, but I kind of came out of it feeling like, damn, it's actually, they're really working hard running these sweatshops. And like, it's hard to be a sweatshop owner, because they kind of embodied that position and were doing those things and being like, well, I got to make some important trade-offs here. And maybe these workers shouldn't be getting so much money. So I think that, like, this kind of goes back to like something I think that we've talked about a little bit, or that's kind of in the air, is this like procedural rhetoric, this idea that Ian Bogost has like put forward of like expressing an opinion through systems, right? Like making a statement or a gesture through systems, and that how the systems, interacting with the system can express a point of view. And that kind of seems like a pretty clear failure, or at least in those instances, right, of that kind of procedural rhetoric. Like the goal was to be like, experience the system of the sweatshop and come out of it horrified. And instead you kind of came out of it sympathizing with the sweatshop owner.
Right, exactly. And I think, like, that was such a great talk. We will post it in the Discord. And we could go so many different directions with it. But, to keep it to what's relevant here, like, that, yeah, it's that phenomenon happens in some way, shape, or form a lot of times when people try to cram a super serious theme into it, into one of these playing styles. It is so incredibly difficult to get a perfect like synergy between like the theme and content of your game and its mechanism. Like, oh my god, it's like threading a needle twice in one shot, right? Like, writing a great story is really hard, and implementing a great game mechanism is really hard. When you make it hard squared, it just rarely happens. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I'm
Yeah.
saying that it rarely happens. And I guess what I was trying to say is, like, so the idea, like, um um I was just very skeptical when I see an advertisement for a game like, Braid, that a platformer adventure game is really going to make me feel some kind of empathy with a character with a strained relationship history or whatever. Because at a certain point, man, I'm just going to want to jump on the bad guys' heads or whatever, right?
And
And
there's a very, very funny clip of Soldier Boy playing, and like the Soldier Boy's review of Braid, you can look it up, but he's just like, this little fucking guy, it's so fucking stupid. Whoop, whoop. He's like rewinding time. Look, I'm gonna jump in the hole. Whoop, this game is fucking dumb. Like, which is a really, I mean, this is the hard, this is the thing about games, right? Is like you have to account for the player, and it could be Soldier Boy who's just like, look at this stupid shit. Whoop, whoop. Like he was not having that experience. He was not being confronted with these free feelings.
yeah, and hey, as always, I've always been a champion that, Soldier Boy's interpretation of an artwork is valid. It is valid.
Extremely.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
it's a fucking meme at this point.
Soldier Boy matters. But so that's one thing, right? The other thing that I would say about, games that really want you to embody a perspective, or that really want to communicate a specific perspective to you, either to help you understand it, empathize it, whatever, is like, if the story is really important to you, like, don't let some dumbass, possibly Soldier Boy, change it, right? Like, don't give Soldier Boy a say in it. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to like bring this back to the visual novel genre, because, as I said, this genre does work for me more often than I expect it to, considering it goes against so much of what I normally like in video games. But it's because, one, in this game, right, there's nothing. This is a really personal story about the game designer. It's inspired by their, by their youth, struggling with their identity and revealing it to their family and whatnot. And you know what? There's really nothing I can do in this game that prevents the main character here, Cassio, from having a fight with her mom. Okay, there's no dialogue option that changes that, right? And in fact, there are no dialogue options at all, right? There's only advancing the story. Um, and so that also eliminates the problem, I think, of like, oh yeah, it's hard to write a choose your own adventure game. It's hard to write 4 different endings that all make sense to a game. No, like in a good story, in a good piece of fiction, there should be only one ending that makes sense, right? Because like you wrote a good piece of fiction to work in a certain way. So I feel like pieces like this being less of a game help them be more impactful works of like audio visual fiction, like more impactful works of art, I guess, better comic books, better movies, like whatever they are. And then the fact that there's no mechanic here, like, again, I'm never like, um it doesn't fall into the trap of the gameplay mechanism running against the emotional content of the thing, because there's really no gameplay mechanism, or rather the gameplay mechanism is so minimal, right? It's only action to advance text, action to advance text, that you can massage that to make sure that it reinforces what's going on, right? In the case of this game, it's the idea of erasing is what advances the text. Super super small gesture, right? It's nothing like, it's not like a genius thing or whatever, but it is perfectly attuned to what the content of the thing is here. And it's why I feel like earnest core weirdly works for me in visual novels, where it doesn't work in other types of games.
I think that makes sense, right? Because it's a balance between the amount, the just very limited interactivity, right? Like, I feel like trying to push too far into interactivity, if you have a clear point of view to express, or yeah, like you say, it's very hard. Not impossible, but very, very hard.
It's so
Makes
often
me
we
wanna.
end up at a similar point. Go ahead, Billy.
I was just thinking about the factory worker game to build empathy, and the comparison with what was released just hours ago, this cursed machine, which you might say is like a satire of a similar sort of degree, a hyperbole of the cursed life of being an Amazon fulfillment center worker whose arms and legs have been removed and installed inside of a stump where they are forced to eat bugs and produce piss and blood that are remixed into other various materials. as your daily grind. Um,
Great back of the box blurb, by
and
the way, right there.
um, whether it's worth playing a minute of that in the last moment, or whether we should wrap it
Yeah,
up
Yeah,
let's
today
let's
do it.
do it. Let's
Actually,
do it. What's the URL for this
on
cursed
chain
machine?
thiscursedmachine.fun.
Yeah, let's
You
do it.
got your
That's a
volume turned up
great way to end this episode. Great way to end
for
this episode. Love it.
the viewing pleasure.
Boom. Super duper fun. Billy, maybe you can walk us through this as I play. Okay, here we go. I'll just read it. Welcome, Stump. The company needs to verify your identity. Blink to start verification. Oh.
Hope you've got audio turned up for the other viewers because I can't hear it.
Oh, it's you will probably not be able to hear it, but the audience on YouTube can. Oops.
Good.
Uh-oh.
Having a classic MetaMask bug.
Oh no,
you might have. Is it on Redstone? Is that where it's running?
I was on.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh god. Hold on.
On-chain gaming, baby.
On-chain game. Here we go, baby.
On-chain gaming, baby.
I just need to.
Who said this is inaccessible?
Right. I need. Hold on.
You're gonna reveal your mnemonic phrase on live stream?
No, I get so nervous. I also don't even like. Hold on, just a second. Give me one moment here. I need to take that.
Is that where you save your? We can see your notes. What do those notes say?
Oh,
Where you store your mnemonic phrase?
Mitch reveals the seed phrase live.
Oh my gosh. No, it was just that my MetaMask is, there we go. Okay, hold on. Here we go. All right, you're back. All right, y'all can see this. Here we go. Sign it.
I can't see your screen anymore.
There we go.
Maybe it's because it's always lagging. Nice.
Oh. I do not have enough. Am I on the wrong chain? Because I have ETH. Oh, here we go.
I could have sworn that they had it set up.
No, it's okay. It was automatically going for that. It's gonna be okay. We're good.
I played the whatever it was, the play test, the early beta of this, and I gotta say, it's fun.
I played it too.
It was surprisingly
really
good.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
They made some updates.
Yeah, it was funny. It was
yeah,
smart.
I'm actually really excited to see the new version.
Blink to continue. Blink.
I know nothing about this.
So yeah, just for context, this is a game called This Cursed Machine by Moving Castles, and it's like a kind of like a factory game. It's like a manufacturing items game where really it's like a crafting game, right? Where the crafting tree is partially obscured, or at least that's how it was in the playtest. Where it's like you have to take the blood and the bugs and use it to make cigarettes or Doritos, and you don't necessarily know what you've got to turn the cigarettes into cigarette juice in order to put them in the Doritos, and you don't necessarily know what the recipe for cigarette juice is, and you're like connecting these nodes together. Yeah, you will live in the pod. You will fulfill your orders.
It's really good. So okay, from now on, only one thing matters: bugs. Life is a bugs sucking slot machine on steroids. Do not disappoint me. Enter the pod. It's okay. I'm a stump. I'm prompted to blink. Help.
Whoa.
This is your pod, the core operating unit in the TCM's Central Fulfillment Center. Blink. Help. Okay, H. So, blink. Select.
And I know that they like your orders tab. Yeah, okay. Got to figure out what you need to make.
Got it.
Down there, yellow at the bottom.
All right. Let's get my order. Okay, so I have to produce piss.
Wow, look at
All
this.
right,
This
I
has got like
accept.
much more fancy than before.
Yeah, this looks great. This is great. Okay, I accept my assignment to produce piss. All right. Return to the pod. Okay. To produce piss, fill 100 bucks.
Oh wow, it's got like tokens now.
Filling.
So everything is a token now. It's basically like a meme coin factory in a way.
I saw them talking about that on the timeline, but wow. So
Okay.
all the resources are tokens?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Okay.
This is why they're talking about like do you my God, what a crazy decision.
So I'm
Just lean into the nightmare world.
plug tank
The
1.
airdrop farmers.
Exactly. Like, oh, get in the pod, farmer.
Uh,
Insane.
so did I do this?
Yeah, so you're connecting
Yeah.
inlets to outlets.
Oh, but
There we go. Nice.
But I put my
Tank
put my
one's got
Oh,
plugs in it. Oh, you went to the outlet?
Yeah, I should have put that
Yeah,
in.
you got to do it the other way around.
Yeah, okay, wait. So how do I undo that?
H.
Plug tank
Yeah, there you
1.
go.
Whoops.
Oh, I'm excited to play
You
this.
gotta unplug probably.
Right,
So hit H.
unplug.
See if there's an
You.
unplug.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, there you go.
Fucking sick. Wow, they've like really worked on this a lot. I mean, I know it was like 6 months ago when I saw it last.
Yeah.
This is like way cooler than it was before.
Okay, great. So now I'm gonna.
So notice you're
connect-
not signing transactions every time.
Yeah. This is where they like
You're-
pre-filled the gas or whatever. They're like,
Okay.
I think that you create a temporary account at the beginning. So you use your wallet to create an embedded account address.
yeah, it's like
Like-
account abstraction or whatever.
This is fantastic. So I connected. Tank 1 is full of bugs. It's connected to my inlet port. My inlet port is connected to me. So I consume the bugs. And by consuming the bugs, I now produce piss and blood. And I just have to connect my piss to the outlet tank.
Sick.
This
You
is-
will consume the bugs.
Yes. All right.
Now you gotta connect it or fill, or there's another word. Plug. Plug it to the tank.
Yeah, tank 3 to my outlet so that
Oh, whoa,
moving.
look at that animation. Cool.
yeah, this is pretty great.
Man, we probably
It's
should
really
we should do like an on-chain gaming episode. Do
Yeah,
they
we
give you a
got it.
map? Do they like, is there a map? How do we figure
No,
out
I
what
mean,
else we're going to make?
I think it's all trial and error.
Yeah, the demo
Oh, really?
version that I played, it had like a PDF that showed like certain recipes, and it was really
Yeah.
nicely like still a little bit ambiguous and hard to follow.
Obfuscated.
Yeah.
I
They
want
have
more
like
bugs.
some instructions that come up. Now you must wait patiently for the tank to fill.
Empty, fill, ship. Do you wipe?
Were you supposed to be filling blood or piss?
Piss.
Which order did you end up taking?
I'm on the
Back to your
piss
orders?
order, right?
You didn't accept it.
Oh, come on, man.
Brutal. Brutal.
I think you might be set up now to just be done.
Maybe it'll
Go
just
back to your pod.
fulfill.
Your tank is engorged by
Yeah,
piss.
time to ship it.
Yeah.
The piss.
You will ship the piss.
Man, There's only two types of devs: the ones who ship and the ones who don't.
The ones who ship and the
That's
ones
a
who
great
piss.
sound effect. This is really good. Unfortunately, you are still financially embarrassed. Start grinding new orders. Oh. I'm gonna do.
Do you want to dry your piss or do you want to dry your blood?
Well, I have piss, so I should keep on that track.
I don't think that it allows you to reuse that piss because you already
Oh,
shipped that piss.
okay.
But at least you know how to make it. I think it's the command line interface here is a really interesting decision to not let you click and drag and stuff. It's cool. Feels laborious and painful.
I feel like the crypto audience is especially like coveted of the dev status, and so like letting non-devs sort of like LARP as one in the command line is also really good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, how do
Be
I...
the dev. Ship the bugs.
Oh, I have to build a dryer. Okay, so now I connect.
So wait, so this is now a shitcoin factory? Like what is going to happen with that? How is that going to play out?
I think that the
No, no, no,
setup
no,
is
no.
that they have a bunch of ingredients that they request that require combinations from their material map that other players can make requests for their own combinations, etc. I'm not sure exactly how that part of it works. It's maybe like only contract interface at this point.
So I could set up a
Um,
request for like some urea and get other people to farm and make these urea tokens and deliver them to me, and I would have to pay them in bugs or something.
exactly. I think
Wild.
bugs is like in some ways the base currency.
How do you get, and by playing the game, you get bugs.
You
Bugs are
earn
like
bugs by fulfilling orders, and then
bugs are
bugs
like
allow you to
mined.
play more orders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, Billy? Can you tell me a little bit about these people moving castles?
Um, it's you familiar with Power Studio? The visuals,
Hana and Rasmus?
exactly. So it's Power
Yeah.
Studio working with Arthur, you know, Arb from Trust.
No.
Um, Trust.support is like a co-working space and a Discord in Berlin. And he also has been working with Zero X Park on the Autonomous Worlds group. So he organized the event and or he's part of organizing the event in Lisbon, or sorry, in Istanbul. And working with another artist, game designer named GVN. And yeah, they're here in Berlin. We're close. They're all G's. We're supposed to be finding an office together too. And it's the first game. I mean, they've done other kind of games in the past, but I think this is the first one that they'll keep online. The other ones I think they ended up taking down. But it's cool, right?
Yeah. No, I'm like looking into them now, and then like they have this like whole article about like different three eras of world generation, and I was just like, oh, these okay, they're thinking about some cool stuff right now,
Yeah,
and
the lore building is strong.
I'm just like
Very,
I'm like trying to connect it, and I get really excited when I go to someone's page and they have two links, and it's to their Twitter and their Arena account, and I'm like, okay, this is someone I want to know who they are.
exactly. I'm actually kind of surprised you don't know them more already. I mean, I'm not surprised that you know Power Studio, I guess.
Yeah, no, they're really cool and interesting. And I think they were last summer I was in Berlin and I was like starting to research the autonomous world stuff. And so I hung out with both of them quite a bit. And I think they are like there's a lot of good, well, I don't want to say this the wrong way. There's a lot of good people doing technical kind of conceptual thinking around the autonomous worlds area, but they're some of the people who I've spoken to in that world that really kind of speak games and games idioms and games culture, that are bringing it into this autonomous worlds, on-chain gaming stuff that were like people that I could really relate to.
What's autonomous worlds? I don't know what that is.
So autonomous worlds is like a on-chain gaming movement, I guess is the best way to describe it, that there are a couple of threads. Mud is one like on-chain game engine. That is Mud the one developed by Zero X Park, or yeah, right, yeah,
Lattice via Zero X Park.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah. So and they're kind of like one, and it's all running on Optimism, generally speaking. And then there's also another group of people doing stuff on Starknet, and they have this thing called Dojo, which is kind of similar. But the idea is to make like an on-chain game engine. But the smart distinction that I think they've made, you know, I got pretty interested in autonomous worlds last summer as it was like all bubbling, and the in my mind the problem of it for, I mean, we should actually just do a whole episode and talk about this because it's like a big, interesting, very pertinent topic to all of our
I'd love
interests.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the
we got to
problem
do
with
a full
autonomous
episode on
worlds,
this. I'm
yeah,
upset that we're just tacking this onto the tail end.
it's like a
This is a lot of
throwaway. Yeah,
content.
yeah.
Sorry, this is all new to me. You
Yeah.
I like the three of you know all about this, and I'm just like, what? And I remember like Billy mentioned this
Yeah.
game, this Cursed Machine, like in one of the first episodes, and like that was like the first taste I got of this. But now I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I would love it if we did that.
Yeah, we should. I mean, maybe we'll do it next week. But we could do like, this Cursed Machine focused episode next week and talk autonomous worlds. And so this is a good, I'll just like launch this out and then we can pick it up later. But it's like the thing that's interesting about autonomous worlds is the idea that non-first party devs, right, third party devs who are not trusted can come in and write new rules on chain for the world, right? Which is a real fucked up idea if you think about it as a game designer, right? It's like this is something new under the sun in terms of games. It's like analogous to modding, but it's as if people could mod the main game while it's running, right? It's like very, very brain breaking. And I think that my maybe like little controversial statement is I think they're smart. Well, it's not controversial, but they're smart to call them autonomous worlds and not games, because I think that porous nature, the fact that they are open borders to the rest of the world and the on-chain world, and people can come in and write code overlaid on them. Like you can't rewrite the base rules, you can only layer on top. So there's like an important nuance there, but it makes it not a game, in my opinion, right? It's like now this secret third thing, right, which is an autonomous world, and is real weird. And like the fact that this is a shitcoin factory that's producing real tokens that people could go and speculate on, and that the airdrop farmers are going to go get in the pod and eat the bugs, is real weird, and interesting, But like, is it a game? In my opinion, no. Or it's some other kind of game that we haven't seen yet,
Wait till you play it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, cool. Here's the map. Yeah.
Yeah. Of all the instructions. Okay, so do you guys want to do you guys want to do this next week?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
let's do this
Yeah.
next week, maybe, and we'll do like one other thing for like comparison, like like maybe we'll spend like 5 minutes playing like Axie Infinity or something, and to do like then and now like comparison of approaches to blockchain gaming or something.
That's good.
Okay, so
Cool.
all three of our listeners, pretend you didn't hear this last 20 minutes conversation, so you can be totally blown away next week.
Awesome. All right.
I'm gonna keep connecting blood, piss, urea, fertilizer.
Yeah,
Until then.
I gotta do that as well. I gotta do this. My piss outputs is just pathetic. I'm wrecked right now.
Dismal.
Get your piss up. Get your
right.
piss up, Mitch.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is exciting then. All right, I'll see you guys next week for this Cursed Machine.
Dip that piss.
Bye.
Sounds good.
All right, see you
Bye,
guys.
all.